So we'll go ahead and welcome new members and guests. If you are a new member or a guest, please put it in the comments. Everybody can welcome you, as well as new pilots and new ratings. We definitely know that there are quite a few new pilots out there, or new ratings. And then new to you and for new balloons, if you'll go ahead and put those in the comments. And as we're all getting back open, ballooning in the community. If anybody has ballooned in the community or done something great, go ahead and put that in the comments. That way everybody can send you wonderful congratulations. And Ken, who is working on that wonderful wheel of prizes, don't forget to sign up for the raffle. As standard, you can pick them up at AIBF office. You'll need to click on the link in the comments and put your name in there and then click submit. We have lots of good stuff. And then I'll turn it over to Peter.
All right, is everybody ready for a good talk tonight? Our speaker tonight is Bert Padelt, who, with his wife, Joni Padelt, owns and operates a repair station in Valley, Pennsylvania, just north of Philadelphia. And the name of the repair station is Best Aviation. That's not just a name, that's also, as best as I can tell, Bert's philosophy for doing pretty much everything he does in relation to ballooning. And if you are lucky enough to have anything that Bert has built, anything from a basket to a load ring to an envelope, because he builds envelopes also, you've kind of got a dilemma as to whether or not you want to actually fly that piece of equipment or want to put it in a museum, because what he builds are museum pieces. And I've got a couple of things from him that I'm really torn with in that aspect also. But in addition to being a mild-mannered balloon repair operator, in the evening, he puts on his magic cape and flies off to remote locations such as Japan or Australia or South America or California or Roswell, New Mexico, and spends his evenings working on special projects that he is in great demand for. And one of the special projects that he has most recently been working on is what he's going to talk about tonight. He is certainly in high demand, and he is also well respected in the ballooning community. He's been ballooning probably since he's about 6 years old, maybe 16, somewhere in a very young age. He is this year's nominee for the BFA Hall of Fame. He is a past recipient of the FAI Montgolfier Award, as well as the BFA Tony Fairbanks Award, and probably 6 or 7 other awards that I have forgotten about. So I'm really looking forward to hearing this talk tonight. And without saying anything more, let's get Bert on screen share so he can start his presentation.
Okay, Peter, thank you. Let's see.
That is most
so I'm going to start this presentation. I guess pretty much what I'm going to discuss tonight is pretty much what I wrote in the latest issue of the Ballooning Journal, which was sort of the behind the scenes of what David Blaine did, and the YouTube promotion and so forth. And that project actually started with this gentleman that I would assume most of you guys know, and those that don't, this is Don Day. Don is a meteorologist from Wyoming. I first met Don in 1997 in a hotel room during the Remax gas balloon race out of Front Range Airport in Colorado. And I think Peter and I met him at the same time, actually. And Don, at that time, like all of us, we were much younger, young meteorologist. And what I remember coming away from that meeting with Don the most was his interest that he had in what he was doing. And the way I related to that was his love of meteorology was exactly like my love is for gas ballooning. And Don did the weather for Peter and I on that flight. And he's been doing the weather for me on practically all of the gas flights since. And it was from a phone call from Don. Don had been contacted by David Blaine, and David was asking Don to put together a team, and he was interested in doing something with cluster balloons. And Don called and told me what David was looking for. And he was going to bring on Jonathan Trapp. Jonathan had a lot of experience with cluster balloons. Don wasn't really sure exactly what he wanted to do, but we would put together a conference call and then go from there. After that phone call, we didn't hear from David for about 2 months. And then finally he called back. We had a conference call, and David explained a little bit in that conference call what he wanted to do. And we decided that the first thing we would do, we would do a inflation of cluster balloons and do some tethering and that kind of thing, and try to show and explain to David how fragile these balloons were in wind and so forth. And David agreed to do that, and we did it in Valley, Pennsylvania. This place that I chose to do this is just across the hill from where I live. It's a very secluded spot, which is what they were looking for. And it provided everything on site. This was an old stone barn that was converted into rooms, so people could stay here, eat here, and we could walk right out of the barn and do the inflation of the balloons right on the field. Don and Jonathan came in a day or so earlier, so we went out and flew the hot air balloon just to do a little reconnaissance and show Don and Jonathan the area. So you can see why this was such a nice place to do this first tether test. Very secluded, a little airstrip as well. This was the field right here where we did the inflation of the balloons, and the stone barn is just on the left side here. After the landing, having a cup of coffee, I threw this photo in. I thought it was pretty cool. This was a truck driver where we landed. The guy was from Jamaica, and he really hit it off with Jonathan. The one problem that we were having was during this time frame was getting helium. There was a boycott going on, and most of the helium suppliers were not able to sell to new customers. So we were thinking that this might be a problem. Don had told David about a helium supplier in Amarillo, and David flew out to Amarillo and met with Jim Prow, who owned the company. And apparently David worked his magic, because next thing we knew, Jim Prow and his son Joe drove from Amarillo, Texas with that tube trailer all the way to Valley. And this is Jim Prow on the left and his son Joe on the right. These were the manifolds that Jim put together to inflate the cluster balloons. In the past, Jonathan did all of his inflations off of K bottles, but having the tube trailer there made it very convenient. We were able to do a manifold and inflate 6 balloons at a time. This here you can see the field has sandbags in it. All of the balloons were inflated and bagged down to the sandbags. The plan was to inflate the balloons the night before and then come out early in the morning, bring the balloons in, and in the middle of the field is the chair that Jonathan used for the Up movie, the promotion where they went on tour with doing cluster balloon tethers in different parts of the country. So here we're inflating the cluster balloons. This was David's first introduction, and at this point, YouTube was not even on board. So David had come out with photographers to shoot photographs and do videos and that kind of thing to try to sell YouTube on the project. So that was what was going on here. Here the balloons are being inflated, and a real pretty photograph of all the balloons in the field. We had a very high pressure that built into the area that was giving us beautiful weather for the whole week. And so we had like 5 days in a row of just gorgeous weather. And this project pretty much lucked out that way throughout the whole inflations, test inflations, and so forth. So here the balloons are all bagged down, waiting to be brought in and assembled for the tether the next morning. This is Brooke Ridgway on the left, a student pilot of mine, my son's girlfriend Casey, and my son William, and Joni on the right. And of course, David is doing what David does best with his cards.
You see it going in the middle, but really it's just right here. It doesn't move. You know what I'll do?
It seems like David was very good at that. I remember several times when we flew, he was great for landowner relations. When we would land, he'd pull out the cards and we'd pack the balloon away, and landowners were happy and so forth. It worked out pretty well. So this was the next morning. You can see how convenient everything was. Everyone woke up, stepped outside, walked right onto the field, and the balloons were ready for the first of the tether work and that kind of thing. So David, again, these were promotional shots that David was shooting. This really, he was just hanging on here. It looks like he was real high in the air, but he was probably no more than 5 feet in the air in this photograph. But he was using these photographs to try to sell YouTube on this whole promotional thing that he wanted to do. So our plan was, after we did the tethering during the morning, we were going to leave the balloons inflated, wait for the winds to pick up, and basically let the winds destroy the balloons, just so that David could see again how fragile they were, because what David's thoughts was inflating these balloons around midday and doing this flight in the evening. And we kept trying to tell him that this just doesn't work very well with these small balloons. Here, it's my turn to serve Don a cup of coffee. My son, William, and his girlfriend, Casey. So here the balloons are bagged down, waiting for the wind. And it was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon when the wind did come up and the balloons started thrashing around and getting destroyed. And all of this was intentional and pretty fun to watch, actually, as the balloons basically destroyed themselves. And it was an eye-opener for David. So it was very successful from my standpoint. We got our point across that you know, these balloons are fragile. If you want this to succeed, we have to do it early in the morning and launch right at sunrise. After the balloons disintegrated, basically we all retired back into the barn and had another meeting, and it was here that David explained exactly what he was trying to do. His dream was to do this out of New York City. He wanted to take off from the Science Center in New Jersey, Liberty Science Center. And he wanted to have kids involved. And the idea was they would walk up to him and hand him a balloon, another balloon, and then all of a sudden he would take off and fly away. And he would climb to an altitude of 20 or 30,000 feet, at which point he would have a parachute and he would parachute back down. The balloon would fly across New York City and then be brought down into the water, and he would parachute and come down into the water. That was his first vision of what he wanted to do. And, you know, there were so many logistics that had to be worked out. The obvious, of course, was ATC and you know, one of the busiest airspaces in the country, getting permissions and so forth. And then, of course, you know, flying to such a high altitude and with very little experience. And at this point, David had just started learning to fly hot air and had never been in a gas balloon. And he was still doing a lot of parachute training, skydiving and so forth. So there was a lot to work out. And at the end of this meeting, I was a little, I didn't have a lot of a real good feeling for the whole project. After the meeting, we came over to my shop. I wanted to show David a gas basket. We were just getting ready for the America's Challenge that year, so it worked out very well. And it was during this meeting that David explained to me, he was very fascinated, by the way, with the gas balloon. And I remember showing him the bunk in the basket and the kick out and so forth. And he got in the basket and he was just fascinated with the whole thing. And I could tell just in talking to him that that it was something that he was very interested in wanting to do. And he at that time told me about his how he was inspired at an early age with his mom, and she'd taken him to see a movie about a boy that had a red balloon that flew away on this red balloon, and that's what inspired him to do levitational magic and that kind of thing. And he would always have these reoccurring dreams of flying and floating. So I could relate to that because it was my grandmother that inspired me at an early age, and something very similar. As I recall, it was a red balloon as well. And so we sort of hit it off after that meeting. After that, we didn't hear from David for a while. And it wasn't until January of 2020 that David called and said, we're having a working summit in, of all places, Lititz, Pennsylvania. And I remember thinking, Lititz, you know, what's out in Lititz that, why would we be doing it there? Well, come to find out, there's a company in Lititz called Tate. And Tate is a company that does a lot of work for the entertainment industry. A lot of rock musicians use Tate's services as far as building stage equipment. And basically an artist would go to Tate, explain to them what they wanted to do, and Tate would then design a stage around what they wanted to do. And David has used this company in the past and decided to go back to Tate to see if Tate would work with him on what he wanted to do. And so we had this meeting at Tate, and after that meeting at Tate, I could see that David was taking this to a new level. He brought on Luke Akins. Luke Akins was a skydiver that was on the Red Bull project on the high altitude skydive that Felix Baumgartner did. And Luke was brought in to basically head up this project. And Tate was brought in to actually put together and design and build the equipment that David would use for this. And coming away from this meeting, I was really trying to figure out, well, where exactly do I fit into this whole thing? You know, Don's doing the weather, that's understandable. Jonathan, you know, they're tapping him for his experience in the cluster ballooning, but why is David hanging on to me? I didn't quite understand that, other than I was going to teach him to fly a gas balloon, which we did in June of 2020. It was actually Father's Day weekend. The weather was good down in North Carolina, and our gas balloon club, the Balloon Aero Club of America, North Carolina chapter, we used our club balloon to do the training on David's flight. It was nice doing it down there because, again, it was doing it down in North Carolina. It wasn't drawing attention to David or his project. Plus, I had all of the local help from the balloon club, which was very helpful as well. So here we are down in North Carolina, prepping the balloon and getting the balloon ready, giving David some instruction in the basket on what to expect during the flight and so forth. You can see the hydrogen cylinders in the background. The weather was forecasted to be basically a nice high pressure. There was convective, as you can see in the background. During the daytime, a thunderstorm or two did roll through, but all of that was expected to be out by the time we flew the next morning. So here we are rigging the balloon and putting the deflation panel in, and then coming back out to the launch field around 2 o'clock in the morning. Really interesting. You know, woke up and looked at the radar at 2 o'clock in the morning, and the only thunderstorm in the whole state of North Carolina was practically right over the launch field. And in the short 5-minute drive from the hotel to the launch field, I watched that thunderstorm dissipate and go away. And that was exactly the kind of karma that we had throughout this whole project. And I'm not sure who had the karma that was working and for us that was so positive, but there were things like that that happened throughout this whole project that was pretty amazing. So here we're inflating the balloon. The balloon's standing ready to take off. The plan was we were going to launch about 2.5 hours before sunrise and go to 5,000 feet and then come back down and beyond the treetops at sunrise. This way we would have accomplished 2 of the requirements that were already needed to have your restriction lifted. One was you had to have 2 2-hour flights. So we accomplished the first 2-hour flight before sunrise, and you have to go to 5,000 feet and back down to the surface as another one of the requirements. So we satisfied 2 of the requirements before sunrise.
Okay.
Here we're getting ready to launch.
Open up the appendix in a few minutes. All right, here, you pull it again.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, listen.
Yeah.
Did you hear it? Did you hear it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay,
Wow.
so the appendix is open.
Here we're taking off.
Where's the national anthem?
Yeah.
Really? Okay, and let it stabilize.
And taking off. So we flew for 2.5 hours. This is what the space crew saw on that flight at sunrise, and this is what we saw.
Which I think they will be.
Take it.
Let's take it. Because it's not putting us that much further going south.
And if you notice, there was no burner noise. Isn't that cool? That is to this day, every time I fly in a gas balloon, it is just amazing how quiet it is. I mean, you hear birds when you fly hot air, but not like you just heard there. I mean, it is just incredible, which is why I love gas ballooning so much. And so did David. You can see the smile on his face, and he was in awe throughout the first hour of the flight. And I remember at one point when we were in the air, he kept asking, can we put the bunk down? Can we put the bunk down? Because I told him when he was back at the shop, I told him a lot of times what I enjoy doing during the day is laying on my stomach in the bunk with my head out of the kick out. And I hang out of the kick out, you know, looking at the ground. And David thought that is the coolest thing. So he asked if we could put the bunk down, and then he said, can I lay down and stick my head out of the kick out? So he was doing all of these things for the first hour because he was like a kid. He was just so amazed at the whole thing, as anyone would be, I think, on their first. But you can see the smile on his face, how much he enjoyed it. And we did about seven landings that morning after we came in and landed the first time. We continued on and did about 7 more takeoff and landings. The morning was perfect for that, as you can see. It was just a gorgeous morning for flying down in North Carolina, and this is what it's like flying down there. Very beautiful. These were some of the photographs that Brooke took when they were chasing us. And David's souvenir from when we drug through some of the trees. This, I think, was one of the final landings that we did. David was flying on this landing, and he had the balloon coming down a little bit quicker than he should have, because the intent was to land on this side of the fence, not on this side. And he kept saying, should I ballast? Should I ballast? But at this point, it's like, no, because if you ballast, you're going to miss the whole thing. And there was a road just on the other side of this fence right here. And so I saw that this actually is going to be perfect, because what's going to happen is he's going to land right here. He's going to bounce, and he'll bounce back up, come over the fence. And I had a handling line in the basket that I simply tossed out to the chase crew.
Right in the fence. Oh, good. Not on the fence. Get over it. Oh, just barely over.
Stop.
David did that all on his own.
Well done, David, dude. Well done.
Oh my God.
You missed the fence by this much. I'm so impressed.
So David, he was a good student, and he listened well, and he executed well. And but not only that, he was very generous, and all requirements were satisfied after that landing. And we could have deflated the balloon then. We could have flown on if he wanted. But what he wanted to do was he wanted to give the rest of the flight to another of the club members. And so Al Nels on the left and Mark Klinger on the right had an opportunity that morning to fly as well. And so and being generous like he was, and so forth, it also allowed Mark Klinger to have the second flight that he needed to get his restriction lifted. So that morning, there were actually 2 people that flew and had their hot air restriction lifted, which is pretty cool. So this was the final landing, and the pack up. Landing was a classic, just like they should be, right by a road. Pack up and walk everything right out to the chase vehicle. What a deal. It just so happened the weather worked out for this weekend. The following week, we had already had on the books the plans to go to Lidditz in Pennsylvania and do the first tether test at Tate with the cluster balloons and the equipment that Tate had put together. So after this flight, we got in the van and drove 10 hours back to Lidditz, and then the next morning we were at Tate. This gentleman on the right is Jim Shumway. He works for Tate and was heading up the project for Tate. On the left here is Luke Akins, and again, Luke was leading David's project. And this gentleman right here is McLean Snow, who was one of the engineers working alongside Jim Shumway. And this is the load plate that Tate designed for the project. This would carry all of the electronic equipment that David would be using on his flight. One side was dedicated for all of the live streaming and the cameras and so forth and the electronics. And the other side of the plate was dedicated to all of the ballasting equipment and the equipment that the electronic equipment that would be popping the balloons. David was adamant on this project. When he skydived and left the balloon, he did not want to have the payload come down on a parachute. He wanted everything to come down as one unit, and he wanted this to do this from an environmental standpoint. He didn't want the helium balloons flying off and coming back down and littering and so forth. So the plan all along was once David left the balloons would be electronically popped, and then thus the payload would be heavy and start to descend. And then as the balloon was descending, we would be following the flight with an ADS-B unit, and we would be seeing the flight path live on the laptop computer. Plus there would be a helicopter that would be filming it, that we would have a screen of what the helicopter was looking at as well. So Don and I and Art Thompson would be able to actually fly this balloon to a field and land it. In theory, that was the idea. Once the equipment was installed, then there would be a fiberglass shell that would go over the plate and hide all of the equipment and make give the appearance that the load plate was just another balloon. This is Mark Shuby Kunston. He is a professional skydiver and a rigger, and he was responsible for making the harness that David would be flying with on this flight. And here you can see David has the harness on, and this was actually the first time that David was hung in the harness. And so the idea was to give the appearance that David was actually hanging on to the cluster of balloons, but in theory, he has a harness that he's wearing that actually has leg straps that come down that he's in. And so even though it looks like he's hanging with his arm, he's actually being hung right here on the back of his shoulder. And all of his weight is being carried down. The harness continues down and down around his feet and back up. Here the balloons are all being inflated. Unlike the way Jonathan did it, Tate's proposal was to inflate and have 5 balloons inflated on an aluminum and tied down on an aluminum beam. This way, it would be easier to move the balloons out and quicker to have the balloons inflated and moved out to the launch field that way. And here you can see that they're closing up the load plate with the fake fiberglass balloon shell. And this was the next morning. There's a electric winch and a rope that comes across the ground here through a pulley up through the center of the stage. And when David was being tethered here, they were just letting the line out that was on the winch in the background right there. So here he's getting ready to go up, and you can see the load plate really does blend in very well and looks very much like another one of the cluster balloons. And there he is hanging all the way up. So this was a very good test. First time that David went up in the cluster balloons with the new harness and so forth. And coming away from this meeting, I had a lot more understanding of what David was trying to do. Things were changing a little bit on how he was going to go about doing this. And he had hired people, professionals that were consultants for the FAA that were working on getting the permissions that he needed to fly out of New York City. ATC in New York City was on board almost right away, and they were working very well with him. So it was looking very promising that he might be doing this out of New York. Still, the balloon had to get registered. It had to be a registered balloon with an N number, and there were a number of hurdles that needed to be done to allow that to happen. The next test was out in Porterville, California, and the plan was to go out and do another tether test, and then an unmanned flight of the cluster balloons to 20,000 feet, and then bring everything back down to see how easy it was to control the balloons and so forth. And here we are out in Porterville. We had a hangar that was rented out there, so all of the balloons, again, were inflated ahead of time, which worked out very well. Here you can see they're inflating the balloons with the K-bottles. This system worked well because each K-bottle filled one balloon. And so you knew exactly what you were getting in lift with one K-bottle. And the fact that they filled each balloon, it made everything very, very simple. So here they're putting everything together for the tether test and then the free flight. You can see Art Thompson here and his assistant working on the electronics on their side of the load plate. This is Art Thompson right here. Art was the lead engineer on the Red Bull project as well. So there was a lot of the Red Bull people that came into this project. And I think it was pretty much Don, because Don was the meteorologist for Red Bull as well. So Don had brought in a bunch of these people as well. And so David had quite a few people on his team that had quite a bit of knowledge. And here we're getting ready to launch the balloon. Well, actually, this was the tether test. And then this was the launch of the first free flight. The first free flight didn't work real well, only went to about 10,000 feet because there were some issues with the electronic ballasting. We got the balloon in a descent, and the plan here actually was to take it to 20,000 feet, release 200 pounds of sand ballast, which would have simulated David's release from the balloon. Then we were going to pop a bunch of balloons to get the balloon back into a descent and then fly it. But because we were having the ballasting issues, Don had, as we had already picked a field and the descent rate was perfect, we went ahead and flew it down and landed in the field that Don had picked out. So this was the landing on the first test flight right here. So we had to go back and figure out a better ballasting system. And then the plan was to come back to California in 2 weeks, and David was going to actually fly the balloon to 20,000 feet, skydive from it, and then Don and I would fly the balloon and bring it down to land. But the problem, 24 hours before I was leaving to go back out there, I got a phone call from David. There was a problem. The FAA didn't want to issue an airworthiness certificate that would allow David to fly the balloon. They were having issues with a pilot leaving a balloon and then the balloon continuing to fly, and they couldn't wrap their head around it. And so they were dragging their feet, and basically they're saying, we don't want to issue a phase 2 of this experimental airworthiness certificate and until we see the balloon fly manned, and then we also want to see the balloon flown unmanned. Then we'll put it into phase 2 and you can take off and do your thing. So David called and wanted to know if I would go out and actually, they needed someone to fly the balloon for the FAA, and then we needed to fly the balloon unmanned. And otherwise the project would be, it would be over. So, and up until this point, you know, I'm looking at all of these people that were contributing, and I kept coming home and I'm shaking my head, and it's like, I want to contribute more. You know, I could make the harness, but Shuby was making the harness, and I couldn't do the weather. You know, Art Thompson was, you know, he was the man for, you know, the knowledge needed to have the electronics to pop the balloons. And all I'm doing is standing on the side watching all of this. So all of a sudden, it's like, finally, I can contribute. And so this was my bag going back out to California. I had my clothes on one side, and I had less than 24 hours to figure out, how am I going to fly this balloon that I've never flown before? What am I going to use for ballast and so forth? And I put all of this together, Joni and I, in less than 24 hours. And when I got out there, we had the airworthiness certificate only for phase 1, but still no airworthiness certificate. And the DAR that was there on site working on the project with us, he was there to issue the airworthiness certificate, but he was waiting from a phone call from some FAA guy in New York that would say, yes, you can go ahead and do this. Meanwhile, though, it gave us time to figure out the, or to see how well the new ballasting system worked. And that's what we're doing in this photograph here. The ballasting system was very simple. It was basically either 5, 10, or 15 pounds of ballast in each one of these tubes that you see here. And there was an electronic squib that would fire, that would break the plastic on the bottom of the tube, and then the sand would pour out into the funnel and down this tube right here and drop the ballast. And that system worked very well. It also gave me the opportunity to figure out exactly how I'm going to go out and fly this balloon. And right before I left to go to the airport, Joni made this this little bib thing that you see here. That's my sand hopper that holds 20 pounds of ballast and a little sand scoop right here. And I had the little 10-pound bags of ballast that I had fortunately had in the shop from another project I had worked on, and I saved these bags, and they worked out perfect for this flight. And then I had little, I sewed little, I had rings that I sewed on these load tapes that suspended to the balloon. And then I had my trail rope in this bag right here that I could unhook with a carabiner and toss over. And I had 2 20-pound bags attached to the bottom of this bag. So theoretically, I could have a 500 foot per minute descent into a field, drop my trail rope. As soon as the 20 pounds hit the ground, my 500 foot per minute descent would slow down to almost a maybe 50 foot, 20 foot per minute descent rate, very gentle. And that's how I proposed flying this. The next morning, the balloons were inflated. We still didn't have permission from the FAA. We were still waiting for a promised phone call at sunrise. And here you can see the sun is up, the balloons are inflated. I'm in the back getting the harness put on by Shuby and waiting. I hear a cheer in the front of the hangar and someone runs back and says, "You're flying." And we finally had the permission. And here you can see I'm getting attached to the balloon. This right here is a parachute, so that if I was flying and things weren't going well, I had a quick release, a 3-ring that I could pull right here. I would then drop away from the cluster, and as I dropped away, it would pull this parachute out of this sleeve. It was a round chute that I would come down on just as a backup. I had no intentions of using that because I've never done any skydiving, but Luke Akins is a skydiver, and he would never fly anything without a parachute. So, and this is the launch. Don had given me a forecast before I took off, and he said, you know, if you there is a box, but you have to go all the way to 6,000 feet. But if you went to 6,000 feet, you'd be able to fly back to the airport and land at the airport. So that was my intent. And I had said that to everybody. I'm going to come back and land at the airport. And the guys from Tate, they you know, not being familiar with ballooning, they thought, well, that's impossible. And so I had a bet that Tate would buy the beer if I landed back at the airport. And so here's the site. This was my view of the helicopter and the helicopter's view of me. And this is the
August 14th. So excited. We're about to do the first manned flight on the Akins balloon cluster that David's going to fly to altitude. We're going to let Bert give it a go on the first time.
Am I officially on the airport or not? You can do it. You can fly this.
Really? That was the craziest thing I've ever been involved in by far. Woo! Wow. And McLean, you still own all the beer in the world.
So I don't know if you heard that or not, but David said, so McLean, you owe him all the beer in the world. That's the only beer I got. I got one beer. So it's sort of like flying in a Gordon Bennett. You know, people always say, well, what do you get? You know, when you, if you win a Gordon Bennett, what do you get out of it? You know, they think, you know, you risk your life, you go out and win the Gordon Bennett, and you're going to get some big prize. And I always say it's a slap on the back and a beer is pretty much all you get. So that's what I got, a slap on the back and a beer. But it was successful. We flew the balloon manned, and then the next day we went out and flew the balloon unmanned to 20,000 feet and landed it. We flew it 20 miles, and which I thought was the coolest part of the whole project. It was cool to watch Don in his element. I mean, Don has a lot of experience flying unmanned poly balloons to high altitudes and bringing the package back down under a parachute. And he was enjoying this because basically that's what we were doing here, but we were able to fly the package. And instead of just bring the package down and land it in a designated area, we were able to fly the package to a designated area. And we did that very successfully. And it was a lot of fun working with them and doing that. Luke was able to put together the video that the FAA was looking for, and I'll show that here real quick.
Wow! How do you feel, Bert? Yes!
In order to prove out our control systems, we launched an unmanned free balloon. We remotely control the ascent by dumping ballast. Our mission control is unparalleled with our situational awareness, camera angles of all sides, and a chase helicopter. For a real-world test, we launched the balloon to 22,000 feet and floated it for 20 miles.
Bring it down, start bringing it down as quick as we can. We just got to make sure we're all out of those areas.
Our ADS-B transponder and ground crew keep us up to date on our current location. Once we reach our desired position and altitude, we simulate David's release. This causes our system to start to climb. We remotely start venting balloons. Once we achieve a desired float, we float it along till we get to our landing area. We then continue to vent balloons, controlling the descent. It actually descends so slow that here you can see some remnants just floating next to it. Once we reach our desired landing area, we continue the descent, dumping ballast to slow for a nice controlled landing. And of course, the first person on site.
So the next day, we inflated the balloons, another set of cluster balloons, and David had another 2 hours of getting a feel for actually flying the balloon by doing this 4 or 5 times across the field. And we were successful in convincing the FAA to issue the airworthiness certificate. And but the problem was we ran out of time, really. A lot of issues. You know, the COVID thing was one of the hurdles that we were constantly working with, and the FAA was still struggling with the cluster balloons and flying in New York City and so forth. And by this time, YouTube was on board, and YouTube had a production schedule to meet. And so it was decided at the last minute to move the project to Page, Arizona, and the rest is history for those of you that saw the YouTube production. But after this flight, there was still one last hurdle that David had to satisfy. The FAA came back, and now we're saying you have to have a commercial license or we won't let you do this. And when Felix Baumgartner did his jump with the Red Bull, it was the same type of concept. He was flying a balloon to altitude. He had to be a licensed balloonist, but yet he was skydiving from the balloon, and the balloon was being flown or landed unmanned. And he did not have to have a commercial license. But there was no use in trying to fight this. It was just easier to go back to Utah. And so a week before the production, David had to fly another 8 hours for his commercial and get his flight test. And he also had to pass a commercial written. We flew out, we flew Bill Hughes out from New York. Bill Hughes used to run the Liberty Balloon School. He would, go across the country and give ground school classes and so forth. And so Bill Hughes came out and tutored David for 3 days. David was flying. I think we flew 4 or 5 days to build the hours that he needed. He went and took the written and actually failed it, got a 69 and had to go back and take it again. So it really did go down to the wire. But I remember this as one of the most favorite times of the project for me. It was very relaxing at this point. It was obvious that this is going to happen at this point. And I remember this, even though the weight was on David's shoulders, I had already done everything I could, and so I was very relaxed. One thing that bothered me a little bit was when David jumped from the cluster of balloons and landed during that YouTube production. If you recall, if you saw it, they immediately, as soon as he landed, they cut the show was over. They did not want to show us landing the balloons because that really had nothing to do with the YouTube production. And so as soon as David landed, Don and I still had the balloon to fly and land. And people are breaking down everything. I mean, this was something I wasn't used to seeing. And the show was over and people were leaving town immediately. And I remember at one point, there was a truck that backed up right in front of the antenna that was used on the transmitter that was used to pop the balloons. And we were trying to pop the balloons and nothing was happening. And we're yelling for that truck to get away from the antenna and so forth. And but everyone left town basically. And I was a little disappointed because there was no closure for me on this whole project actually. There was closure for myself and the boys from Tate. I 2 months later went back to Lidditz and I gave Jim and McLean balloon flight and McLean's girlfriend, and that was great. And then the icing on the cake for me, a month later in November, I got this message from David.
Hey Bert, I'm in Jardin du Ranlag and I'm right in front of the Chateau de la Muette, right there. And this is the Jardin, and I came here today. It wasn't easy to find this exact location, but I think you know what happened here on November 21, 1783. And I made you this little special present to congratulate you for being accepted into the Ballooning Hall of Fame. So a big congratulations. This is monumental. I know you love the history of all this, and this will be sent to you from Paris, but I'm gonna put it away because it's about to rain.
Okay. And there we have it. I'd be happy to answer a few questions. I know I've probably gone over on time, so that's fine if there aren't any, but if we have time, I'd be happy to answer a few.
So Bert, this is Peter. We got one question from Fred McAllister. Did David have any means to vent the individual balloons, or was it all completed remotely? So could he do it from the air?
No. No, the idea was that we would be venting the balloons, and if his, for instance, if his ascent rate went up a little bit faster than we wanted, we could pop some of the balloons. Some of the lower balloons, there would have been a way if he had to, he could have pulled some of the balloons down. And he did have a knife with him, so he could have, but the idea all along was that we would be bending the balloons.
Okay. No other questions that I see on the chat room. I think it's just amazing to hear the details that get lost with a 2 or 3 page article, and when you're just watching it on YouTube. A lot happened behind the scenes, and obviously a lot of things had to go right for the final accomplishment to happen. A lot of serendipity involved and a lot of hard work. And thank you very much for giving us some of the details that we wouldn't have heard otherwise. Any other questions from anyone? All right. Thank you very much, Bert.
Oh, I do see there is someone asking how much prior experience did I have?
There we go.
None. I have, well, actually, I was involved in one of Jonathan's cluster balloon flights that he did. Well, actually, Troy Bradley flew the balloon on that one. I flew a camera guy next to him in hot air. So I'd seen how it worked, and to be honest, I was not really all that fascinated with cluster ballooning because there's so much work involved in putting all of these cluster balloons together. And so I really was not all that interested in it. Matter of fact, that's why I designed and built a quick fill balloon so many years ago, because I was trying to take the work out of gas ballooning. And with the cluster balloons, it's a tremendous amount of work. They do fly differently than a regular gas balloon. And I'm glad that I did it because it was fun to be able to contribute to the project. And I was happy that I was able to do that.
One more question. How many balloons made up the cluster for the actual flight to 25,000 feet?
Believe it or not, it was 52, which is, isn't that how many cards are in a deck?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
it is.
So, yeah. And all of that was figured on David's weight, obviously, and the amount of ballast that was already predetermined. So it was basically all of the weight that was going on that flight, and then David's weight that determined how many balloons would be on that cluster. So it was just a coincidence that it was 52 balloons.
Thank you very much, Bert. You're welcome to stay on for the rest of the meeting if you'd like to, but I know it's kind of past your bedtime, so we'll excuse you if you...
I think I'm going to excuse myself because you're right. It's 9:30 now. I usually go to bed at 9 o'clock. So good night.
But you get up early. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Thanks,
Bye.
Bert. That was great.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you very much, Bert, and I'm sure that we will have this recording available for watching on our YouTube channel after this meeting. So as we move along, we'll move on to board updates. Peter Kuhn, go ahead, Vice President.
I don't have a whole lot. I did have a good discussion today with the head security person, Mr. Corvino, CNM, because we wanted to clarify situation with some balloons landing on a CNM campus this past weekend, which really didn't cause any problem, but we wanted to know what CNM thought about it. And after talking to him for about half an hour, he basically said for liability reasons, they would prefer that no standard landings occur on any CNM properties. They want it pretty much to be only an emergency situation. And if you do have to land on a CNM property, there will be a security guard who will contact you probably immediately because they're there 24/7 and will ask you to fill out a simple information form, which they have to file. It basically will be your name, your contact information, and the status of all your passengers and yourself that you're okay. Nothing much more than that. It's not something that they are going to report to the FAA. They simply keep it on their records. And then the last request from him was that you, after you fill out the form, that you pack up the balloon and leave the premises as safely as you possibly can. He said there was a case, not this past weekend, but several years ago, where a balloon landed on the property and stayed on the property and celebrated with champagne and other alcoholic beverages afterwards. And that again is not allowed on CNM property. So not a big deal. We've talked to Fiesta about this. It is going to be, all the CNM campuses are going to be listed as sensitive areas on the new Fiesta PZ map. What that means is, please don't land on them if you can possibly find any other place to land. You would effectively be declaring an emergency if you landed on those properties, which could potentially get the FAA involved. But our goal here is to keep the FAA out of this as much as we possibly can. And CNM is very agreeable to that. Their security team is just protecting their interests. And Mr. Corvino is very, very understanding. We gave him contact information for Quad A members. If anything does happen, he wants to get a hold of us. And that's about all on that. I do have presentations I'm working on it for the next couple of months. Not sure what order they're going to be in, so I won't even talk about that, but there will be information on the cloud bouncer coming up on those. That's all I got. Jennifer.
Thank you, Peter. And just as a reminder, sensitive areas are purple, just so that way if you're looking at your map, they are a purple color. So thank you very much, Peter. And Secretary Sue O. She's muted.
Unmute.
Don't know whether you can hear me or not. I may get lost. Low bandwidth. But I want to thank Justin Griffith for being a newest member for Quad A. I also want to remind everybody that renewals need to be in by February 28th. And it's like, thank you for all of those who have renewed already, but keep on trucking. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Sue. Dick Rice, Treasurer.
Thank you. I'll be quick. I do want to point out that both entities, the social club and the foundation, are in the black. Ta-da! That's quite an accomplishment during this COVID period. The pie charts will be in the cloud bouncer. If you have any questions when you see them, give me a call. I don't mind. Send me an email, whatever. I'll try my best to make you understand what we're doing. Right now, we're in great shape. We do have cash. Looking forward to the 2021 Albuquerque International Balloon Fiesta, which may be a little different, but by golly, we're going to have a fiesta. Okay, right, Ray Bear? That's all I've got.
Thank you, Dick. Community relations, Jason.
Come on, Stephanie, unmute.
Hello, this is Stephanie. Hello, everybody. I put in the link, the chat to everybody, the security phone number. So it's always better to notify them before they notify you of what you shouldn't be doing. So yeah, just keep the relations good. I know my report's mostly just people not happy about balloon landings. I think with COVID, people are just home more, so they see more and they're probably at the end of themselves. So they're a little more irritable, but we got to do our part to try to get the good relations. But the CNM information will be in the cloud bouncer too under community relations. So if you have any questions, but fly safe, land safe, and just keep good relations after you land safely. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Stephanie, Jason. We appreciate it. Special events, Katie. I'm not sure if I saw her on here. So we'll move along and we'll check back with her if she should pop in here. Education, Peg.
Good evening, everybody. So unfortunately, we still haven't seen our way clear to schedule any weekend ground schools. We talk about the situation every month, and if we do feel at any time that things can open up such that we can do it, we will advertise loudly and broadly. And in the meantime, we're continuing to work on our comprehensive self-paced online private pilot ground school. We're still driving hard to get this up in March. It's going to be a phenomenal product. It's not a ground school that all the information needs to be put into just Friday evening to Sunday afternoon. It's really focused on, hey, to be a competent balloon pilot, here's everything that you should know. And so Ken Tooley's doing a phenomenal job with the graphics, but as you can imagine, it's taken a lot more time of the instructors to script their work and the videotaping. So we haven't advertised a date yet when we'll go live, but please look to that. And as soon as we get the private pilot one done, we will roll into creating one for commercial ground school as well. So please stay tuned. The only other item what we have to mention is that Quad A inclusively is working on improving our online store / creating one that's integrative of anything that's sold through any of the committees, so Ways and Means as well as the Education Committee. And to help facilitate that, we really needed one person to manage it all for us. And luckily we had a volunteer in the form of Tom Fisher, who stepped up to really take on the task of putting our merchandise online, making it easy to purchase the product online, and in addition to simplify how to get the product to you. So please stay tuned on that. We'll be communicating more as Tom figures it out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peg. And thank you very much, Tom Fisher, if you're on here, for volunteering and stepping up. We greatly appreciate that. And flying events, Doug.
There we go. Good evening, everyone. Well, for what seemed like the first time in eons, we actually had a wavered event last weekend for friends and lovers. And I would like to thank Katie and Jennifer for all their hard work putting this thing together. It really came together well, except for Mother Nature. Our intent was to fly out, and obviously that didn't work. So we did a fly into the field. We had 9 people who actually scored that particular day. But I think the real winners that came out that day was how well the scan system worked for people who were registered to participate in this event and using our new pad system. I mean, I think that went flawlessly. And moving forward in March and all the other events we have, this will be the future that we'll have with the club moving forward from that particular standpoint. So for those of you that do not have your information in the pad, please let's take advantage of this time and get it in. If you have any questions, get back to me. March competition, there is one on the 13th. mark your calendars. It will be a waivered event and it will take place at Fiesta Field. And that's basically it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doug. And kudos, yes, the scanning method worked wonderfully for everybody that was registered. So good job. And crew development, Sue Palmer.
Hi, everyone. February was a good month. We had good participation for our online crew games. The winners are on our Facebook page and our club website. March will be, for the first time in a very long time, an in-person crew game. Yay, I'm so excited, I know. And details are being worked out. Just a few little things we want to tweak, but we hope to see you there. And see you next month.
Thank you, Sue. And now to our nomination chair, Ray Bear.
Thank you, Jennifer. Tonight, I would like to review the candidates that we have so far. Then secondly, we'll open the floor for additional nominations if there are any. Tonight is the last night for additional nominations. So the slate that we have so far for Vice President is Peter Cuneo and Ted Mays. For Secretary, Taylor Caldwell. For Ways and Means, Karen Converse. For Special Events, Elisa Bustamante and Maybelle Pendleton. And Community Relations, Jason Burns and Steve Williams. So that's the slate that we have defined so far. I would like to open the floor for nominations for any of the open positions. You can shout out, you can wave your hand, you can enter a chat, whatever method works for you. Try to get our attention.
They're all rushing to it. Not so much.
Hearing, seeing, feeling no additional nominations, we'll close the nominations with the slate that I just addressed. Now, the people that have been nominated have the opportunity to address the membership, and we'll let Jennifer sort of control that rather than me. And so until we see again, I think we're finished. Jennifer, go ahead.
Perfect. We'll go ahead and start from the top. For Vice President, I don't see Ted Mays on here. I know that he might be indisposed right now, so or recovering actually. So if Peter, did you want to talk about anything or why you're rerunning and re-upping?
I think I've said enough tonight. My main goal has always been to provide interesting speakers and to back up the president. And that's what I would continue to try and do for 2 more years if you guys want me.
Thank you very much, Peter. I don't know if Taylor Caldwell's on here. If you are, just unmute yourself and holler so we can see you or hear you. If not, we will continue to move along. Let's see, Karen Converse, Ways and Means.
Hi, I'm Karen Converse, kind of running to help the club, and I just give back. I sit on a couple other boards, teach at UNM, so I like being very involved in all the communities that I'm a part of, and that some of my business background would help with Ways and Means. So that's pretty much all I have.
Perfect, thank you, Karen. And what color is your balloon that if we see you out there flying?
That's up for debate on what color my balloon is. It started off as black, but now it's dusty. So we'll go with black with different colored pennants.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right. Special events. Is Elisa Bustamante on? No. We'll move along to Maybelle. If Elisa is on, she can holler after. Maybelle Pendleton, I thought I saw you join. Are you still on?
Yeah, I had to get unmuted.
No, you're good.
Hi, I'm Maybelle Pendleton, and I've been around for a year or 2 or 20. And Elisa and I both were interested in working with special events because we feel like it's an important part of the club, and I've been kind of in the background for a while and thought it wouldn't hurt me to jump up now that I don't have as many activities as I did going and help out. And I'm just looking forward to the club having another good year.
Wonderful. Thank you, Maybell. And I don't see Elisa, so we'll move along to community relations. Jason, go right ahead, or Stephanie on here.
Hello, everybody. I appreciate the sport of ballooning, the happiness it brings everybody, the happiness it brings me and my family, and I love being a part of it. So vote for me. Like Peter said, if you like what I've been doing, vote for me. If you believe in term limits, then vote for Steve.
Thank you very much, Jason. All right, Steve, go ahead. Steve Williams.
Hey, good evening. I think Jason's probably done a great job. Ray asked me, he knows I've been wanting to get more involved with Quad A. I'm fly a couple times a week, know what it's like to be in the air. A little nervous when you're landing in a new place. So I guess the only thing I would say is community relations is really important right now, more than ever. Working with the educational committee, that every pilot up there a cheat sheet of what to do in the special circumstances, and then hand out. And if anybody has a special circumstance, I'll go follow up and personally meet with them, might diffuse the situation, and relations is important. Outside of that, I appreciate y'all, what you do. I'm currently the secretary of Top Gun, and I just love our Albuquerque community.
Perfect. Thank you, Steve. And I think that's it, unless you see any other hands up. Ray, did you have anything else for nominations?
Well, I would like to thank the efforts of Becky DeSantis and Trent Caldwell in the efforts that they've made over the last several weeks. And maybe we'll drag them into ballot counting as well. But thank you very much, guys, for your help.
Thank you very much, Ray. And thank you for being the nomination chair and pushing and strong arming or convincing very nicely some people to help join the board. Thank you very much. All right, so we'll move along. FAA reports. Any FAA? It's always a good thing, I guess, when they don't attend in a weird kind of way. So BFA, anybody from BFA representing this evening? Going once, going twice. All right, we'll move along. VFRS, Kelly.
Hi, some of you may have seen the email already, but unfortunately we've had to cancel the St. Patrick's Day rally. I know last month I thought that we'd be able to do a reduced size rally, but unfortunately our potential launch site refused permission. And so we don't have a launch site in addition to all of the COVID issues. So we've had to cancel. We may be doing, the city may be doing some activities the 4th of July. So we may be asking for help for that. But other than that, our next rally will be 2022. So that's it.
All right, thank you, Kelly. And Top Gun.
Yes, so our event was supposed to be last Sunday, and based on the weather forecast that turned out to actually be quite accurate with gusts to 20 knots, we canceled early and avoided the rush. But Ray Bear is the honorable mention for being the first person to pick up his stuff and be ready to fly.
Always the optimist, right?
That's it. That's it. Well, there were a few of us that actually picked up. So, yes, sir. But you were first. The other thing that we're trying to do now, working with Doug Gant, and I'll probably end up working with Fiesta some. Jennifer is, if there's an approved target for one, it should be an approved target for all. So we're going to try to combine our targets list so we can all have maximum flexibility on what we go after.
Sounds good. Thank you, Dave. AIBF for Balloon Fiesta.
Hey, Jen, this is Sam. Yes, I'm on. All of us in the Albuquerque International Balloon Fiesta office share the same enthusiasm that Dick Rice has about, by golly, we're going to try to have a balloon fiesta this year. And so to that point, there's been a lot of work going on behind the scenes. Jennifer had just sent out an email to all the approved pilots from 2020 this week, letting them know that as of March 1st, they will have an opportunity to go in and update any of their documentation on their original application that was approved back in 2020. And any interested pilots that were not already registered for the 2020 event will have an opportunity to do so after she initiates that March 1st rollout of those new Cognito forms. In addition to that, we've been working on getting interested shapes back if they are still interested in participating in this year's event. So we're starting to roll out pilot application updates and working along, hopeful that as we continue to make good progress with COVID-19 vaccinations, that things will open up. We'll be able to have a fiesta this October.
Thank you, Sam. All right, and Balloon Museum, I believe Peter's going to give this report for Nan Masland.
Yeah, Nan unfortunately wanted to speak tonight, but she was unavailable having put a couple of her kids to bed right at the time we're doing this. So instead, I'm going to stand in for her. And the main thing that she wants to let you folks know about, if you can see that on the screen now, there's a new exhibit opening up at the Balloon Museum March 5th or thereabouts, titled In Their Words, the Stories from Women on the Ground and in the Air, featuring firsthand accounts and personal objects from many different women who have played critical roles in ballooning from the very beginning of the sport. And it's going to explore how these women continue to make an impact on our sport. The curators in preparation for this exhibit have interviewed 24 women balloonists locally, internationally, got their personal experiences on tape and video, and these stories will be woven into the exhibit narrative to provide the visitor with an immersive experience on the magic of ballooning. And I really think, from what I've seen, it's going to be a very interesting exhibit with a lot of local interest. And in addition to this, they're maintaining I guess you could call it inventory or a catalog of all women balloon pilots. And I'm sure it's not complete at this point, but one of the things I will do if I go to the exhibit is look down the list and see if I can add any names, because they are accepting more names. They're trying to make this a comprehensive list, and the more names they get, the better. So go to the exhibit and add the name of a woman balloon pilot that you know who is not on the list already. The only other piece of information on the Balloon Museum is it is open by not invitation, by appointment. Still not able to host our meetings yet, but we're continuing to look to that point in the future when we can all get back together again in person. Even though these Zoom meetings are great, I'd rather be seeing you guys in person. That's all I got.
Thank you very much, Peter. Okay, and well, I know a few of you's favorite part is the wonderful Ken Tooley Wheel of Fun for the raffle. So what are we going to do when we actually go back to tickets? That's going to be a challenge. So go ahead, Ken, steal the floor.
So it's not going to play the audio apparently tonight for you guys, but here we go.
We got the audio, Ken.
So Roseanne, ready for another one?
Go for it.
Alrighty, another one. So close, Doug, so close.
I'm beginning to believe your wheel is weighted.
It was rigged. It was rigged.
Hey, do we want more?
Go for it. You got two more.
Two more, okay. Right. At least we have more enthusiasm from the crowd tonight anyway.
Yes.
Last one. That's it, right?
Yep, that's it. Thank you very much. So it looks like our next general meeting, hopefully, we know it'll probably most likely be via Zoom, will be March 23rd. We'll see you all then. You all have a nice night, and we will post the recording in an email and link for YouTube once it's complete. Have a good night.
TTFN.
Bye-bye.
Where's
Thanks,
Dick?
everybody.
Say good night, Dick.
Great job. Thanks.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, Dick. Thank
Good night,
you.
Dick.
Thank you. Rowan and Martin would love it.